We had 2 weeks to find a house in the summer of 1985. I remember one person who told us if we bought a house in East Nashville, no one would ever come to our house for parties. It was just not considered a good place to live.
East Nashville was the wrong side of the river. For the longest time, we didn't have urban neighborhoods. We didn't have walkable streets. We didn't have mixed use. East Nashville took several blows throughout the 20th century and was kind of left behind in a way.
Nashville itself worked very hard and aggressively to move people out of the core.
Early 20th century urban renewal, the interstate was built, and of course, as many cities and many neighborhoods suffered from people moving out to more suburban locations, much of East Nashville became rental property and ultimately became slumlord properties.
And so it was a pretty tough neighborhood. People would siphon gas out of your tanks and stuff like that. I mean, you used to have police who would come here, and if somebody reported a theft, they would say, "What do you expect if you live in East Nashville?" Which is not terribly helpful when you're reporting a theft.
By the 80s, they were beginning to fight back against that. During that time period, neighborhoods organized. Neighborhoods became intense in their advocacy in the Metro Council.
You had to be to live in East Nashville. It was just part of the culture. People coming in realized that they were going to have to be citizen activists. So we really had to work hard to get metro departments, the police, codes, all that stuff to take us seriously, and it took a long time.
In the 1990s, East Nashville knew that it was back and on its way. There were things we didn't have and things that we still needed. But there was an expectation in East Nashville that those things would come because we were in it for the long haul. And then there was a tornado.
In April of 1998, a tornado roared right through the heart of East Nashville and really rocked us back on our heels. It was devastating. Some people say it sounds like a train coming through, but there was a kind of roaring sound, and then that subsided. All the trees came down, and we had trouble recognizing the neighborhood. I'd get lost sometimes because it looked so different without all the trees. And there was a feeling after working for 15 years to try to preserve and restore the neighborhood that we were starting from scratch.
But then what was really amazing about the next few days for us was how the community came together.
A lot of people came who were from across the river, who'd come over here to help, say, chainsaw trees, and decided that maybe this neighborhood was worth investing in.
There was a realization that there actually was another side of the river, another part of the city.
It was a very exciting time because it was like people were acknowledging that East Nashville had value, and that wasn't always the case.
And ultimately, that kind of spirit of helping one another is what led to the idea of the UDAT. The AIA's UDAT had been incredibly impactful in other communities.
It's like a SWAT team of experts that the AIA puts together.
Multidisciplinary teams of experts in city planning and transportation and economic development and help communities solve problems. It's really an opportunity to create a vision for a community in a way that we had never seen in Nashville before. The beginning of every UDAT starts with a community meeting.
Design experts from around the country are here to help the historic urban neighborhood recover from last year's tornado.
Hundreds and hundreds of people turned out across economic lines across neighborhood lines and everything.
And they talked about what they loved about East Nashville, and they talked about their vision for East Nashville. And at the end of the day, we realized that we all kind of wanted the same thing. Safe neighborhoods, good schools, access to quality food, walkable streets. The UDAT allowed us to have that conversation, and really was the beginning of a conversation that carried on well past the UDAT.
During the weekend tour, the group of architects and city planners flew over and were driven around various East Nashville neighborhoods to come up with their roadmap for development.
It's like what they call a charrette, an intensive planning session.
And it was really fun to watch this group of interdisciplinary experts from around the country hammer out these ideas, into the wee hours of the morning.
People who live and work in East Nashville will learn tonight about a new plan to restore and redevelop their neighborhoods.
At the end of the UDAT, the team presented the plan and the vision, and there were nearly 1,000 people at that presentation.
Hundreds of neighbors gathered tonight for the unveiling of a master plan for the historic area just east of downtown.
The UDAT plan had an entire menu of ideas that made up this bigger vision.
Among proposed changes, turning 5 Points, this five-way intersection at 11th and Woodland, into a retail center for the neighborhood.
Many of the recommendations in the UDAT had to do with the physical environment.
Also adding more 100% corners, intersections that are commercially oriented within residential neighborhoods. The goal, to make East Nashville a walking community.
They recognized the value of urban form and wanted to enhance that. They recognized that we had sidewalks and alleys, mass transportation and stuff, and they stressed the importance of that. What really resonated with me was this recognition that we had a really diverse population. One of the things that they picked up on was that we really wanted to keep that as much as we could, that was a crucial aspect of our identity.
It's ambitious, Holly. What's the time frame?
Well, each project varies. Some will get underway immediately, others look into the future 5 to 10 years from now.
Holly Thompson, thanks.
That day, I stood up in front of those 1,000 people and said, hopefully in 10 years we'll be able to say that the tornado was the best thing that ever happened to East Nashville.
This is not going to be a one-year process. When you have a UDAT, what you're looking out is what's the outcome 5 and 10 and 20 years later.
Hi, how y'all doing? Good, how are you? Doing well.
One of the first priorities that the UDAT team pointed out is that we needed to continue the dialogue.
East Nashville was sort of fragmented among various neighborhood organizations, and they recommended a sort of East Nashville Council, as it were, which we formed. It was called Rediscover East.
A not-for-profit that had representation from all the neighborhoods, including the public housing neighborhoods, had business owners represented, not-for-profits represented, churches represented, and we would meet at least once a month to continue the dialogue and to work toward the implementation of the UDAT. One of the first initiatives that the city embraced that came out of the UDAT plan was the idea of improving Main Street.
If you look back in history, that road was not a pedestrian-friendly space at all. It was all built for the car and getting automobiles in and out of the city quickly.
They created crosswalks and planted street trees and began the process of showing the community how this commercial strip could be transformed. I think one of the most significant changes that happened after the UDAT was the commercial corners that were vacant, that were not being utilized, suddenly started to come to life. Almost everyone in East Nashville is within walking distance of either a bakery or a coffee shop or restaurants or small locally owned retail, and it completely changed the face of the neighborhood.
We have a running store and a bike store now down in 5 Points. So it's a very different vibe than it used to be.
People come from the other side of town to visit and to go out at night.
This is an it place, and this is a vibrant place. We are a destination now, and that was part of what we wanted to be.
To me, one of the most important things is maintaining the authenticity. We don't have a Starbucks over here. Not sure we want a Starbucks over here. We have 5 or 6 great locally owned coffee houses, and we love it that way.
We are not going to be downtown. We're going to be our own East Nashville.